So let's kick it off, guys. Let's give a warm welcome to the second day of the planned Zoom gathering. Again, this is the first time that we've done this in our history, so we're very pleased that it's turned out so well already. I'm going to let Ronan ring the bell and give us some opening remarks before we then introduce the speaker and the agenda.
So welcome again, everybody. I have to ring the bell. Since the first gathering in Portlaoise, can you see the bell okay? Yeah?
Mm-hmm.
In 2000, we have built a tradition around this bell, and I just want to add a little to that on this weekend. In the past, the bells in the towers of Grangefertha, Ceart and Abú, and other church bells around the country would be heard in the surrounding fields and hills, telling people, including our Fitzpatrick ancestors, that it was time to gather and attend. Those would have been very familiar sounds from the old country at home. Now, from Ireland, I ring a bell that came from Portlaoise, with its own familiar sound that can be heard live around the world, telling Fitzpatricks, wherever they are, that it is time to gather and to attend. I wonder if our ancestors, your ancestors who left these shores, would ever have imagined that. I think they would be well pleased. It's time to gather.
Thank you very much, Ronan. And once again, eloquent as always.
Thank you.
So today's agenda, we're going to be receiving a presentation from Steve Zalewski, who will be talking about the Fitzpatrick Multimedia Archive. The Fitzpatrick Multimedia Archive is a collection of several hundred photos and historical documents discovered over many years of Fitzpatrick research. This presentation will describe the contents, organization, research benefits, and a method to download, search, and retrieve its contents from your own PC. Okay, so with that said, I'm going to turn it over to Steve, who is going to give his presentation on the Fitzpatrick Multimedia Archive. Take it away, Steve.
Thank you, Ryan. First of all, good morning, or good afternoon, or good evening, depending on where you are. It seems like we have all the time zones that are represented. I just wanted to say that I wanted to congratulate both Tim, Mike, and Kate for their presentations yesterday. They were all very informative, and as was the discussion afterwards. So I want to welcome everyone to the second day of the 2021 Fitzpatrick Clan Gathering. I'm Steve Zalewski, and I'll be presenting the introduction to the Fitzpatrick Multimedia Archive. We'll be going into some have you got my screen?
Yes.
Okay, all right. These are this is an overview of what we're going to be covering today. We'll start out with some history of the archive. What can the FMA do for you and how you can get started? And the functions of the three screen areas we'll go into in some detail. And we'll finish up with a case study of Kathleen Mitchell. So a little bit of history, first of all. During our research for the descendants of Brian Fitzpatrick, Ronan and I encountered a variety of media types. We obviously had paper documents and photos, and we encountered books, digital documents and photos as well, PowerPoint presentations, and internet postings. We often needed to compare these resources for verification, inconsistency, or additional information. For example, what resources did we have related to Bernard Edward Barnaby Fitzpatrick, second Lord Castletown? And the information we needed was distributed among stacks of papers or books, digital images, or on the internet. So our problem was how to effectively search all of our research material by any text, media type, individual, or family line, and display or print all the results that we had about what we were searching for. So the effective retrieval of these items would require descriptions for hundreds of multimedia, categorizing each type, identifying each entry with a family line. We also needed a flexible search method based upon any or all of these characteristics. We wanted to record the source for each item for reference in case we needed to go back and make sure we got the document correctly or there was any additional information there. We had to have the ability to display or print individual or groups of multimedia that satisfied any search criteria that we needed. And finally, we needed the ability to locate anyone in a descendancy of a documented family line. So the Fitzpatrick Multimedia Archive, or FMA, was created to meet these needs. And now, this archive is available to any researcher free of charge. The FMA contents currently contain 350 multimedia entries. There are images of notable Fitzpatricks and pedigrees, castles, maps, tables of content, documents, book extracts, coats of arms, censuses, vital records, and memorials. The sources of these records include the National Library of Ireland, the National Archives of Ireland, Trinity College Library, Lambeth Palace Library, Church of Ireland, Russell Library, the National Archives of England, personal collections, and a host of internet websites. When appropriate, each archive entry is identified by a connection to the Barron, Arran, or Deer Park lines. A general research category also provides research sources not connected to a specific line. Our future plans for the archive are that we plan to add new entries to the archive as they are found. We'll also expand the documented Fitzpatrick family lines and include their descendancy charts as well. These additions and updates will be made available over the internet and notifications made through several methods, including the list, the newsletter, and our website. Let's take a brief look at a few of the archive contents. Here is a brass stall plate of General Sir Geoffrey Richard Desmond Fitzpatrick in the Lady Chapel of Westminster Abbey in London. Here is the east window of St. James the Apostle Church in Grafton Underwood, England, in memory of John Wilson Fitzpatrick, Lord Castletown. These are the Fitzpatrick cenotaphs of Inishmore in the Aran Islands. Then the inscription at right is one of 8 and reads, "Pray for Patrick Fitzpatrick, his wife Margaret Fitzpatrick, who erected this monument in the year of our Lord, 1754, and their posterity." Now, what can the FMA do for you? Well, it can provide an in-depth insight into general Fitzpatrick history, as well as individual family histories, by providing capabilities to search by a Fitzpatrick line, any multimedia type, and/or any text. You can also display and print copies of original documents from major Fitzpatrick authors. You can also display descendancy charts of some Fitzpatrick lines with more to come. And you can display the source references for all entries in the archive. So how can you get started with the archive? You could download these 3 documents from the research tab at our website shown here. You can read the FMA introduction, which gives you a broad overview of what we've covered here, as well as more detailed information. You can follow the FMA installation instructions, which shows where to put the files, which you can download, and gives you instructions how to download those files. And read the FMA user manual, which tells you how to make the best use of its search abilities. So we're going to take a look at what this looks like to you once you have it installed on your computer. So after installing, you can open the archive, and after you accept the usage terms, you'll see the following screen. So this is the main screen for the Fitzpatrick Multimedia Archive. It's broken down into 3 segments. The upper left is the search area. It's here where you enter the search criteria that you want to find, and you can either preview or print a formatted report for all the items that satisfy your search criteria. And you can also reset the search field for your next order of search. The lower part is a display area, which shows the results of the search criteria. It also displays and prints individual items, and you can also view the sources for each of those items. In the upper right is the descendancy area, which contains the legend for colors in the display area, and it displays the descendancy charts. We'll go into these in a little bit more detail. So the search area is where you indicate what it is that you're trying to find in the FMA. The question mark boxes to the right here indicate that there is a help screen for each of the drop-down boxes that are shown here. For example, the research category, which we'll take a look at first, you can find out the contents of that by clicking this arrow to the right, and it will explode or drop down the options that you can choose for that research category. So you can select the entire FMA, you can search the entire FMA, or if you want to limit your search to, for example, one of the lines, Barron, Deer Park, or Aaron line, you just choose that option and it'll be displayed in that screen above. There's also a general category, which is information that references those things that are not related to a specific line, but are of general Fitzpatrick interest. We'll take a look at the general research category in a little more detail for a minute. This category contains items that aren't connected to one of the documented Fitzpatrick family lines in the FMA. Among these are indexes to other sources, unpublished manuscripts, tables of content, photos of headstones, Bible extracts, items of general Fitzpatrick history, and published Fitzpatrick genealogies. We'll take a look at a few of these general research category items. Here's an extract from the family Bible of Barney Fitzpatrick from the Church of Ireland, the representative church body library. To the right, it lists Barney Fitzpatrick, his marriage, and to whom he married, and the date, as well as his children and their dates of birth. And I found it interesting in the left side, a little bit of insight into Barney Fitzpatrick. He says, "Now, my son, I hope you will beware of ill company or vice that would be prejudicial to your soul." Here are the descendants of Captain John Fitzpatrick and Bridget Phelan from Reverend John Sherman of the Sherman Papers in the Russell Library. This is the same John Sherman that wrote Loca Patriciana, which Tim cited yesterday in his talk. Now, these are field notes. So in all likelihood, these are not available anywhere else. So this is very rare, rare documents to be able to view. And finally, of the general Fitzpatrick categories, or general research categories, is the baptismal records of the Kilronan Parish in the Aran Islands, which show the people that were baptized, as well as the parents and the dates. And again, this is just information of general Fitzpatrick interest if you happen to think you have ancestors in the Aran Island. So returning to the search area, we can search for specific media types. You can look for all, which is the default, or you can look for only documents or only photos or scanned documents or a slideshow. The difference between a document and a scanned document is the document is in its original format. Okay, somebody needs to mute. Okay. So the difference between a document and a scanned document is that a document is in its original format, that is Microsoft Word or text or PDF, whereas a scanned document originated in a paper copy and was scanned in order to produce a photo of the document. Now, the search field is the last of these three, and you can enter any text that you wish that you want to search the archive for. You can put a name in there, a location, a castle, map, anything that might be in the description. And the FMA will look through all of its descriptions and show you which descriptions fit that search criteria you've entered. Once you enter that information in, you select the magnifier to display the contents of the FMA that match the search criteria above. So here's what is returned when you ask for William in the FMA. And towards the bottom here, where it says record of, the number 38 that you see there, that tells you how many records it found based upon your search criteria. Notice the different background colors that you see here. They correspond to the top right. For example, anything in blue is part of the Barren line. If it is in yellow background, it's part of the Deer Park line. If it's this tan color, it's part of the Aran line. And if it's normal white, it's a general category. So if you select the page with the magnifier, it will preview to the screen a formatted report, including the sources, for all the items that we saw on the prior screen. It's just that this will be formatted. And here's what that looks like. Notice that down here includes the sources. Now, if you want a hard copy of what you just saw on the last screen, you just press this key with the printer on it, and it prints that formatted report to the default printer. If you select reset, all of the options that you see here are restored to their default values, and then you can start another query of the FMA. Now, if you wish to search for heraldry in the FMA, you can do it in two ways. You can do it at two levels. You can search for all heraldry items, or you can limit to any of the three heraldic components. So you enter heraldry to find all heraldry items, or you can enter either arms, crest, or motto to find only those items in that heraldic component. So these are all the heraldry items that are in the FMA. And again, looking at the number down at the bottom left, you can see we have 49 heraldry related items in the FMA. But suppose you were just interested in finding only photos of heraldic crests in the Aran line. Not a problem. Just enter the airline in the research category, media type is photo, and search for crests. And you'll see these two. Shown here is the FMA 349, which is contains the Fitzpatrick crest of the Aran line. And it's a section of the stained glass window at the Woodland Manor Hotel in Bedford, England. We'll now take a look at a little more detail of the display area. This is the area that displays the results of the criteria you've given in the upper left in the search area that shows the contents of what the FMA found based on that search criteria. So the first column is an FMA number that's unique. The second is the FMA description. If the description occupies more than the 2 lines shown here, if you move the cursor into that area where the description is and click the button, you'll see a scroll bar to the right where you can see the full content of that description. The next column is the media type, which corresponds to the media type that you're searching for in the upper left. There's also a copyright column. If the checkbox is checked, it's a copyright item, which entails some special handling. And the magnifier on each line displays that particular item to the screen. We'll take a look at FMA number 1 to show you what happens when you press the magnifier. So here's page 451 of the Harriman genealogies, and which shows Brian Fitzpatrick and when he was changed his name from Fitzpatrick to Fitzpatrick. And it also shows other pages prior to this show his ancestry, and the pages subsequent to this show his descendants. Now, the FMA honors all copyrights, and the description of some of the copyrighted items are included, but not the items themselves, to protect from copyright infringement. But the descriptions are available in the FMA, but the items themselves may not be. But some copyrighted items are available on the internet, but you may require a sign-in or a subscription, like with Ancestry.com, may require a subscription, and Family Search requires a sign-up, but not a paid-for description. If you're authorized, FMA will patch you through to the copyrighted items on the website through a screen that looks like this. So if you have a supported browser, that is Firefox, Google, Chrome, Internet Explorer, or Microsoft Edge, which are the prominent ones, if you have a supported browser, all you have to do is press that button at the bottom of this screen that says Internet, and it'll take you directly there to see that item. If you do not have that one of these supported browsers, you can copy this link using Control-C and paste it to your own browser. And then it will take you directly there. That's the link. Now, some of these, a very few of them, will have the description, but will not allow you to go to the website because they're not available on the website. So, but it does give you the ability to show where that item comes from, and you'd have to go there yourself in order to see that document, but it is available. If you want to print any of the individual FMA items, you choose the printer icon as shown here. And for each source, you can click that button that is describes the book there, and it will show you the source of that item. So we'll take a look at the one for FMA number 1. You can see that comes from John O'Hart's book in 1892, Irish Pedigrees, or the Origin and Stem of the Irish Nation. Additional information is here that help you locate that, maybe in a library. In addition, there are URLs that are sometimes listed here that for copyrighted items, as well as other pages that are not included in the FMA. Okay, the third area we're going to look at is the descendancy area. That's in the top right of the main screen, and you can see it has 3 lines here. The colors display the area. The colors background are the colors that refer to these lines in the display area in the lower part of the screen. If you select one of these lines here, the Deer Park or Erin line, you will actually see the descendants of the Deer Park and Erin line. The Barron line is too large to actually shown on the screen, and we're working on ways to be able to break that down so it's more palatable, but it's a little tricky. So that's going to be for future release. There's also a help screen that shows how to navigate each of the charts that you'll see. And you can also change the scale to make them a bit more readable. If you were to select the Erin line from the screen, you will see the Fitzpatricks of Erin descendants from Dennis Fitzpatrick. And as I mentioned earlier, that you can actually blow the screen up a little bit so you can zero in on a particular area you're interested in. So my last topic is going to be a case study of a Kathleen Mitchell. So here's the scenario. You're going through a box of photos and memorabilia, and you find a photo of a woman in a trunk. And on the back of the photo is just written Kathleen Mitchell. And you want to know who is she and who's her family and how the FMA can help you. So the first thing you do is you put in the search area for Kathleen Mitchell. And we can see we have an entry, FMA 183. It says Kathleen Mitchell and her maiden name, Fitzpatrick. And if we click the magnifier here, we're going to see that FMA number, that photo. And this is FMA 183. Now you determine that FMA 183 is the same person that you found in the box of photos and memorabilia. Now the archive records her maiden name as Fitzpatrick. Now we can search the archive for Kathleen Fitzpatrick. So we put her name in the search field, Kathleen Fitzpatrick, and we find 2 entries. There's a 1901 Ireland census and a memorial card of Fitzpatrick's of Deer Park. Let's take a look at 346 first. We do that by clicking that magnifier, as we've done before, and we find this memorial card, which has her death date. And you know that this is the same person that is on the card that you found, and it gives her birth date as about 1896. But is she the one in our photo? So let's take a look at the 1901 Ireland census that has a Kathleen Fitzpatrick. And here's the 1901 census of Ireland. We can see Kathleen Fitzpatrick, and she was age 4 in 1901. So this is strong evidence that this is the Kathleen Fitzpatrick. It's not definitive, but it's a strong indicator. We also see that she has a brother, Thomas, of the same age. It does list her parents, as Michael and Mary Fitzpatrick, as well as other siblings. So let's take a look at it, see if we can find a Michael Fitzpatrick with a wife named Mary, like is listed in the census. And we get several. Now, the one that's particularly of interest is the one at the bottom, 197, a family tree of Monsignor William Fitzpatrick, 1893 to 1972, the son of Michael Fitzpatrick and Mary Phelan. And here's that document. Now, it's a little bit too small to read at this scale, so we can blow it up. And over here, we see Kathleen Fitzpatrick and Thomas with a note that says both born in 1896. In addition, it shows both their other siblings of John and William, and her parents, Michael and Mary Phelan. Now, since the background of FMA 197 is yellow, we know that this line is from the Deer Park line, and we can select it from the FMA descendancy area. So we click on that Deer Park line, and these are the descendants of the Fitzpatricks of Deer Park. A little bit too small to read for me, but we can blow it up and zoom in. And here we can see Kathleen Fitzpatrick and her husband, John Mitchell, and their 6 children. And since she was born in the late 1800s, her marriage and children were likely born in the early 1900s. We can also see to her left, over here, is her brother Thomas, as well as her other siblings. And her parents, Michael and Mary Phelan. Now, if we trace Kathleen's paternal ancestry up this chart, we can trace her ancestry to Florence Fitzpatrick, who lived circa 1700. So FMA has brought to light the maiden name of Kathleen Mitchell in the photo, her husband's name, the names of their 6 children, the parents and siblings' names, her mother's maiden name, several dozen of Kathleen Fitzpatrick ancestors and collateral lines with many dates of birth and death, and a paternal ancestry for 200 years from a photo in a trunk. So let's recap what we've seen today. We looked at some history of the FMA, what the FMA can do for you, how you can get started, the functions of the 3 areas, and our case study of Kathleen Mitchell. So we have some time for questions. So if you'd like to unmute yourself, I'll be happy to answer questions.
First, before we get into Q&A, I just want to give Steve a round of applause for that wonderful presentation. So everyone clap for him, because that was absolutely wonderful. The power of that tool, I hope people come to use it in the coming years. I hope people really take advantage of it, because it's such an asset. Okay, so if anyone has any questions, go right ahead.
Got one.
Karen, go ahead.
All right. So you and I had talked about this not too long ago because of my health reasons. I've got all of these photos and documents, over thousands worth of stuff. And I thought, well, simple, I'll just put it on a flash drive and I'll mail it to Ryan. But obviously from this, I'm getting that know that I can go to the site and it will be me doing the physical work of uploading all the information that I have, correct?
Steve, you're on mute, Steve.
No, I'm not on mute.
No, Steve is on mute.
I'm on mute.
Okay.
Yeah, Karen, this is a little bit different. What you're going to be getting and what the instructions will show you how to do is the 350 FMA items that I talk about in this presentation are available for download to your computer, nearly all of them. And
Okay. What if I
as
wanna
well as the application that I showed you is also downloadable. And the instructions on how to interrogate the FMA is all covered and available on our website. Now, if you want, you do not have the ability to update your own files to the FMA. Okay.
How do I
But
get
if
it to
you
you?
have- Well, if you have, each item, Roland and I are going to have some instructions that we're going to send out to those people that have information that they would like to include. And the information has to have information like you've seen today. For example, where did you get the information? What is the source? Who is it? And a variety of other things, because in order to maintain the consistency of documentation, we have to have that from who's ever submitting those documents. So that's coming down the road. We're not quite there yet, but we'll get to that point.
So you're not ready
answer
for
your
a flash
question?
drive yet then?
No,
Okay.
we're not, because, well, we're not because, I'm sure all those pictures are valuable, but we need to know specific information about each of those photos, because other people are going to look at those photos and they're going to want to know who they are, where they come from, do they relate to any of the Fitzpatrick descendancy lines that we've documented, and so forth. So we have to fine tune that, and then we'll get those instructions out to those people like yourself that may want to submit information to the FMA.
Every one of my photos that I do, like for my father, my grandfather and all that I've scanned, because I have a digital imaging business myself, I use the white border down below and I date it and put the people's names and where they're located at. So every photo is pretty much documented in itself. And then like every newspaper and every document, I've got a little red thing that states the newspaper, the town, and the date of each other. So everything I've done.
Well, that's
Okay,
great,
thank you.
Karen. That's great documentation, and it will be valuable for your family and others as well.
Thank you.
All right, you
Okay,
bet.
Colleen, you have a question?
Yeah, just real quick. First, I also have plenty of photographs when you're ready, and I can pretty well document who's in them. They're contemporary, let's say, going back to, and whenever you're ready, I can send those in, big slug of those in. But maybe you can comment on some of the other lines, that don't belong to the hoity-toity, like my own. It was just plain. We don't know where we came from, but maybe, you could talk about people that live in the lower rent district that, might be able to use your, absolutely fabulous work here to just, I love history. I'm gonna read it all, but I'd like to put some more stuff or know more about those other lines that are dangling in space.
Yeah, as I'm sure many would. We have, this is kind of our first cut of this, and we have to keep it manageable for one thing. And obviously we started with lines that we knew of, and those I talked about in the presentation. And the other lines, there are obviously a lot of other lines that are not covered in here. And we'll have to address how, if we're going to incorporate all those, how can we do it so it's manageable for other people to get information? And Ronan and I are just going to have to do some brainstorming on that. That's a good point, Colleen. Thank you.
Maybe geographically, maybe you have the main lines and the different colors and some other, and then below that have a submenu or something based on, like we're talking about geography. Tim was talking about geography, or most distant known ancestor or something like that, a submenu that, so that what you have when you first log in is exactly what you have anyway, which is the higher, the main hierarchy. And then us low rent people living in the low rent district, I'm used to it. You can click and find out it's down there somewhere. So, it's so in other words, keep intact what you have, because it actually really spells out what we need to know, and then from there initiate some kind of subtopics.
That's a great idea, Colleen, and we'll definitely take that into consideration and pick your brains a little bit more, because I like the idea of geographical placement or some other thing other than just the noble
a keyword
pages.
like New Orleans, a keyword like
well, there are already keywords in the search. Yeah.
What?
Okay.
Okay.
I was saying that there is some, we've made an honest attempt to try to include in the descriptions those things that people are likely to search on. So if, for example, if you had a photo of someone from New Orleans, we would include not only their name and New Orleans, if, because somebody could search for either one of those. So, and then they would likely get a hit. So I think those are great ideas, and it's certainly, this is our first cut, and there will be other versions later on.
Excellent job. Of course.
Thank you.
Mike and Kate Lankor, you guys have a question?
Yes. Yeah, that's an incredible website. So I'm wondering, when you put the photo in and then you identified that she was Kathleen Fitzpatrick was her surname, and then you entered that and searched that, and it popped up on the 1901 census with Kathleen Fitzpatrick in it. Have you already downloaded into this all the 1901, 1911 censuses, and or no? Okay.
No. This go ahead. Yeah, this is not what you were looking at, and what the Kathleen Mitchell scenario was a way that you could use the synergy of the 350 documents. And it's only 350 in here right now, so it's not nearly like. Don't anticipate. I don't want to mislead you and think that all of the 1901 census is in there. No, this just happens to be one of the 350 documents and photos and so forth that are included in the FMA that would be advantageous if you were looking or in that scenario where you found that photo, for example. So, and remember, these documents, these 300, there's only 350 right now, and all 350 of those can be downloaded to your PC. I shouldn't say all 350, but about 340, I think. The other ones are copyrighted, but they can be downloaded to your PC, and the application, and as long as you go with all the instructions that I've indicated, you can do the same thing that search on it, those 350 based upon the descendancy line. You can look at the descendancy of the Aran Island and the Deer Park, and find out a variety of things from those 350. And among those 350 are things that you're just not going to encounter because they took a lot of work. When Ronan went to the Russell Library, he picked up a lot of information about Shearman's work that is just unavailable unless you go to the Russell Library. So, and we try to include a lot of those so that it would make those more available to general researchers. Thanks for your question, though. That's great.
Yeah, and thanks for the answer. Again, it's an incredible website.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Does anyone else have? Peter has a question.
Not a question. It's kind of one of those little nuggets that show that whole thing of six degrees of separation doesn't apply to the Fitzpatrick clan, I think, because we're all so close and tight to each other. Steve, that's a super piece of work. Really impressive. I know I've seen the evolution of the FMA over the last number of years, but it's really getting to a point where it's going to be so useful to all of us and to lots of other researchers too. So well done to you and to Ronan for his input.
Thank you.
I just want to say, I don't know if you can see, I think on this side, you'll see a little crest at the bottom left or right, depending what you're looking on my screen, which is directly beneath the Fitzpatrick crest. It's my local GAA, so a Gaelic Games. I mentioned this to some of you guys back in Portlaoise in 2018. You'll see on the crest there, it's got 3 crests. It's got the Fitzgeralds, that red X on a white background. You got 3 castles for Dublin. And on the left side of the crest, you see the Fitzpatrick crest, because this is my local GAA club, which both of my daughters play for, incidentally playing in a Dublin Camogie final tomorrow morning for the club. And it was founded by Monsignor William Fitzpatrick of Deer Park back in 1931 or so. So that's, and I'm in Dublin, so this is a long way from Deer Park, but I mean, he's still revered around my locality here as being, he was nicknamed the Doc. He was Dr. Fitzpatrick to all the kids around here. And just a funny story, he used to bring the local, it was all boys back there, girls didn't play the games back then. There's tales of him driving 14 boys to a football game in the Phoenix Park, all loaded into one car, driven by the Doc. So that's kind of urban legend or myth. I'm not sure what way it goes down, but just a little nugget of what's going on in the world and the role that Fitzpatrick's playing in my life right now, and my kids too. It's kind of funny.
Okay,
Thank you.
Ryan and Peter, I'm going to stop sharing.
Okay.